All right, so it's time, T-0. So let me start. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me tonight. And I hope you're all having an excellent DrupalCon. I have not been able to go to as many sessions as I'd have liked to, but it's definitely turning out pretty well, I think. So welcome to my session, Media in Drupal 8 and Up, Everything You Need to Know. So, you know, the title, Media in Drupal 8, obviously, was written before Drupal 9 happened. Oh, yeah, thank you for the link, Brittany. So the point of this session is that I call it Everything You Need to Know because there is an awful lot I could say about the media system, and there's an awful lot to know about it, and a lot of really interesting technical details, which normally I'm all about that. But I'm going to kind of go against type, and I'm not going to talk about that sort of stuff. I want to talk about the media system from more of a site builder perspective. And so that means I'm going to keep technical info and theory to a minimum. I want to give basic practical knowledge that will help you get up and running with the media system in Drupal. And one favor I would ask is if you have questions, just put them in the chat. I'll be watching as best I can. If you prefix the questions with Q or QQ, I should be able to identify them more easily. So much appreciated in advance. Little about me. My name is Adam Globus Honig. I go by Fenna Proxima on the internet, and I work for Acquia as a software engineer in the Drupal acceleration team, where we work on Drupal core and related projects like the Lightning distribution. I've been coordinating in an unofficial capacity the core media last couple of years. I co-maintain the media system, and with apologies to all the cat people, I like dogs, so we'll have dog pictures in my demo, and I talk too fast sometimes, so let me know if that's a problem. So there's an awful lot I could tell you about media that I won't get into, but I want to give an architectural kind of weight in. I was trying to find the opposite of a deep dive. Because I do think that there are some things that are beneficial to know about the media system and how it fits together, and how it relates to things like file and image fields, since there's a certain amount of overlap there. So I'll talk about that, and then I'll do a live demo of sort of a basic setup of the media library, some basic customization that may be useful, just to sort of give you a sense of how to use it. And after that, I'll just go into a few useful modules that are very handy when dealing with media, and some related sort of modules from that ecosystem. And I'll just talk I'll finish off just by talking very briefly about what's coming up next for the media system in Drupal core and where we intend to go from here. So let's jump in with a little background info on the media system. It consists of two modules. The first one is called Media, and it's not related in any way to the Drupal 7 media module. It was added to core in Drupal 8.4, so a couple of years ago now. And its job is to represent media as Drupal entities. Pretty straightforward. Second module, which I'm sure you've all heard of, is Media Library. And that module makes media reusable in the UI for content authors and other users. And that's it. The media module is the plumbing of the media system. Media library is the UI. And this pattern should be familiar with things like views and views UI or field and fields UI. It's the same idea. One plumbing, one UI. So the media module is the foundation of this whole thing. I'll start with that. And media's purpose, as I said, is to represent media as Drupal entities. So therefore, media in Drupal have all entity superpowers. They're structured content. They can have fields. They can be revisioned. They can be translated, moderated. They can be listed with views. They can be themed. You can put them in Layout Builder. You can put them in search. Anything you could do with entities, or pretty much anything you could do with entities, you can do with media. So that's fun. The other thing is that they, like nodes, have types. And this is now where things will get a little bit more abstract for as short a time as possible, I promise. So bear with me. So media types. Broadly speaking, media types are very similar to content types. In general, whatever, they sort of serve the same purpose. So whatever you can do with a content type, you can do with a media type as well. That having been said, there are a couple of important aspects that set media types apart that I need to explain. So the first thing is that all media types have what's known as a source, and that's just sort of a fancy word for what kind of media you're dealing with. So the media system being very flexible is something that can handle a lot of different kinds of media. So you can deal with images, YouTube videos. Those are pretty standard, prosaic. You could get to weirder things like tweets, Instagram, Spotify playlists, SoundCloud embeds, etc. Maybe something even more interesting than that. And it can handle all of these things. All of these are considered different types of media, and we call that a source. So a media type is always associated with a source. The other thing that all media types have is what's called as a source field, and a source field is a normal field. It gets automatically created when you create a new media type, and its purpose is to just store the single most important piece of information about a given media item. So for example, if you have like image media, the most important thing about that is likely to be the image file itself. And with a YouTube video, it's not going to be an image, it's going to be the URL of the video is the most important thing about that media item. So a media type that uses an image as its source will have an image field to hold the image, and that will be its source field. Media type that uses YouTube videos will have a URL field to hold the URL of the video. So what exactly constitutes this most important thing about a media item really varies by source, but all media types will have a source field to hold that information. So if you put all of this together, I would summarize the architecture of the media system as being all media entities have a type and a value in their source field in a sentence. And that is all the theory I'm going to get into. If everything I just said feels more complicated than just like a simple image field, that is an accurate perception. It is, but we get a lot of benefits from this. The first advantage here is that media can be more than just files and images. The concept of this sort of concept of a source, this abstraction, opens up a lot of doors for us. And it also means that no matter what kind of media you're dealing with, it's handled consistently. There's always a consistent media type. There's consistent ways of dealing with this with different kinds of media. So that consistency means you can configure things. It means that you can configure things the same way across media types. You can interact with them the same way as a developer, as a site builder. So that's really useful. Media being entities gives us a ton of benefits as well, like fields and views integration. A common use for that is like adding a taxonomy vocabulary to a media type. And I want to just answer a question I'm seeing in the chat, which is why say source instead of type? The reason we said source instead of type is because sources and types are two different things in the media system. The source is kind of an abstract sense of like, I'm dealing with YouTube videos, and the type is a concrete piece of config that sort of specifies that's something that you can attach fields to, basically. There was a real debate trying to come up with the word for source, because like there was definitely a lot of overlap of the concepts, and so we struggled with that. But yes, source is not media type. Don't apologize. That's why I'm giving this session. It's because this is confusing. And yes, multiple media types can use the same source. The source doesn't care how many media types it's associated with. I should have mentioned that. Last advantage we get is that media is reusable. And I will talk a little bit more about that. So it's a little bit, so yes, it's more complicated for sure. There's more kind of concepts to juggle in your head, but I think the benefits outweigh it because we just get a lot of value from this. So before I move on, I want to expand on that last point about reusability, which is I want to expand on that last point about reusability and specifically reusing things like images. I find that, when you add media to a content type versus like an image field, it can be confusing to understand what the difference is. And so I tried to diagram it. In a traditional image field, you have a node, it has an image field. You upload an image to that field, and now that node owns that image, and you cannot reuse the image anywhere else. If you want to reuse the image somewhere else, you have to just re-upload the image, and now you're going to have two of the same image in your file system, and that's just how it is. So in a media field, it's effectively an entity reference where the media has the image field, the media owns the image, and then a node or whatever else wants to use that media can refer to it. And the same piece of media can be referred to by any number of things. And that is really a crucial difference. So if it sounds like an entity reference field, that's because it is under the hood an entity reference field. Ta-da! So this brings me to the media library, which is the tool we have in core to reference media items. And hang on a second. That's an interesting question. I will get back to it. So the media library is something I'm pretty sure every other CMS on planet Earth, probably in the whole galaxy, has and has had for eons, and now Drupal finally does. So hooray. This is just a module for selecting and adding media visually, intended for use by authors, by regular users. It's pretty simple to use, fairly intuitive. A lot of work was put into making it usable and accessible also. There's still some distance to go there, but we tried. We got a lot done. You can use it with the keyboard. It works. It's pretty close to it just works. Parallel mirror universe is covered. It pretty much just works out of the box. When you create a new media field, it will just use the media library, close to zero configuration, as close to zero configuration as Drupal ever gets. It is customizable because it's built around a view, and you can modify that view in whatever way you see fit. So that gives you a lot of flexibility. It has integration with CK editors, so you can embed media into your live text, into your WYSIWYG editors. And it has a very small API to integrate with other things as well, if you want to. So that's really useful. However, it only works with media items. You cannot use it to embed nodes or taxonomy terms or some other kind of entity. It just works with media, and that is an intentional limitation. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So to recap, media are entities with all entity superpowers. All media items have a type, and that type has a field on it, which is meant to store the most crucial piece of data about a given media item. Media types are also associated with a source, and the source can be more than just an image. It could be, well, could be a bunch of different things, but every media type has one source. With image fields, the content that has the image field is what owns the image. Media fields, the media owns the image, and the content references it as an entity reference field. And the media library is freaking awesome, but it only works with media. If you take nothing else away from this session, take this slide away, because this truly is, in my opinion, everything you need to know. And I want to pause and go back to some of the questions. There was one I saw about whether media will have a revision tab, like to look at the revision history. And my answer to that is it should. But it doesn't right now because of what I can basically summarize quickly as reasons of core development being kind of weird sometimes. But it definitely should have that. And it could there's probably a module for that, and if there's not, there should be. And I think there's one more I want to do. And someone asked if media can be treated like other entities / content types, can it be associated with groups and subject to group permissions? I personally have never tried that, but I would have to assume the answer is yes. Because again, it's just an entity, really. And is there a good, easy way to get all references to a media? I am going to cover that. I will mention that later. The answer is like not in core, but there are modules for that. So all that being done, let me go into live demo mode here. And what I have is a pretty simple, a really basic Bardic Drupal 9 here with nothing, you know, no special sauce at all. I've turned on the media and media library modules. And you know, there are, I think I have just one content type in here called article. I have a taxonomy vocabulary, nothing really special about this. So the first thing I'm going to demo is just how to add a media field to a content type. In this case, I have an article content type. It's got some fields. This is all really standard. So when we go to add field, wow, my computer is being slow. I think it's hopping. Oh, well, too late now. Must sally forth. So you add a field. Field type is media under the reference group. Makes sense. I'll just call this related media. Nice, boring name. And I'll let this reference unlimited things. And just like a normal entity reference field, you can choose which media types you want the field to access. I'm just going to choose all of them for simplicity's sake. So otherwise, things might go wrong later in the demo. So there we go. We have our field. If you go to look at the form display, oh, I'm going to use Samuel L. Ipsum for my text. Don't worry. The nicer version, because there's a lot of profanity in there. Anyway, if you go to configure the form display for this content type now, you see you have the related media field. It's automatically using the media library, and that's that. I don't have to do anything here. So let's go create an article to see how this works. MFing Ipsum. There. I have to keep it PG, I'm sorry. And you know what? I don't even have a body field on the article, which is kind of funny. I don't know how I managed to do that, but I guess we'll fix it later. So here is the media library. It's got all these different media, all the available media types are right up here. I don't have any audio documents or videos in here, but I do have some images I made of HTTP status dogs. I didn't make these. I stole them from the internet, of course. So I have my dogs here. I can do a little bit of filtering. I can search by sort of partial file name. So got the 302 dog or not. I think I'm going to go with the, yeah, I know. Well, I have sloths. But I also like dogs. So all right, go with the Frisbee dog. And if you click insert selected, hello, there's a dog. Let me add another one, actually. It's because I want to be able to show the sorting. 200 OK. I love this guy. I'm going to put him first. So then we save this. And hey, it's just, there's my media. How very basic. Let me add a body field back to the article content type so that I can maybe put some text on there and embed a media item in that text. I should have had this content type before, and I do not know how I, oh, I'm sorry. Apparently I have it, and we're just not gonna, yeah, okay, whatever. We'll just go with that. So if I want to embed media in the body text of an article, for example, I would put, you have to go configure a text format. This is about the most setup you ever have to do for this. And I think I was using basic HTML. So let's go configure that. And what you'll see when you have media and media library turned on is you'll see this lovely button available, image with audio. We'll just swap this out because that's this, get rid of the standard image thing. So just do that, and then you have to enable the embed media filter, which is kind of the magic that makes it actually work. It should pretty much, the default settings are usually fine. So I'll save this. Let's go back to my content here. to answer a question that just came up, that's a really good question. You can put any number of, you can put the same image on one page 1,000,000 times if you want to. It's like entity reference fields. There's no opinion there. So you can do whatever you want. So let's go back to my ipsum with which has no ipsum. Come on. All right, there we go. Want a body field. So there's my media library button, but let me get some ipsum here. Oh yeah. This is the best ipsum, by the way. Highly recommend. So okay, I have some text. Let's add a dog. So I click this button to pull up the media library. And I'll just, I'll upload one from my hard disk this time. Because, oh yeah, that's so cute. So you have to, when you create a media item in the media library, you will have to fill in required fields for that media type. And that includes custom fields that you add to the media type that are, oh my God, Star Trek ipsum, don't. Stop distracting me. Anyway, you have to fill in custom fields or required fields that are attached to the media type. And I'll just do something boring here. When you save it, the media item is created, it's in your media library, and you'll notice that the other ones in this case are all grayed out now because, and the reason for that is that when you're embedding media into CK Editor, we felt that most of the time you just want to embed one at a time. It would be kind of weird to embed many at a time into a text editor, so we just limit it to one. So I have this one doggo, and now it's embedded into CK Editor. And I can override the alt text. Alt text will actually, to answer a question that just came up, it will be brought in for images. And you enter the default alt text, which is what will be used for the CK Editor embed, and you can override that if you want. And you can also change alignments. You can add a caption if you'd like to. This works basically identical to how normal image embedding works in CK Editor. Prepare to die of cuteness. And that looks pretty good to me. So I'll save that. The source view is not as, the markup's not as complicated as it, well, it's not super complicated, let me put it that way. And yeah, there you go. So we have this image, we have, I think, alt text. I don't know how to view alt text except by inspecting it, which will probably make my computer go on fire, so forget that. And that's how you embed a media item into CK Editor. When you reload the editor, it'll show up. You can still edit it, change the embedding, change the alt text, whatever you want to do. And I liked it better on the other side. Forget that. So there you go. Stephanie, the answer to your question is yes, you can embed a document or file. I'm not going to demo that right now because it doesn't, because quite honestly, it doesn't look as nice in a demo, but yes, you can do that. So let's look at creating a media type for, say, remote videos. And by remote video, I mean YouTube and Vimeo, basically, which course supports out of the box, which normally also would be present in a normal installation of Drupal, but I deleted it so I could show you the process of building it. So to add a media type, we go to Structure, Media Types, Add Media Type, and give our media type a name. I'll just call this YouTube or Vimeo. We'll select, this is where you select the source. So these sources are all the ones that Core provides you, just out of the box. Remote video is the one that works with YouTube and Vimeo, and modules can provide additional sources if they want to. And I'll mention that briefly a little bit later. We'll just keep all the default settings here. This is a little advanced, so no point in getting into it right now. So here's our newly created media type. Things get pre-configured for you, so you don't really have to do a whole lot else. If you go look at the media types fields, you can see that it automatically created a field, and this is, it automatically created the source field for this media type. Pretty much nothing to do when creating the media type, I don't think. So one thing we could do, if we wanted to, one question that sometimes comes up is the ability to add additional fields, as I mentioned, when you're to the media library, when you're adding media in there. So let me just demo that right now, actually, while I'm at it. Let's add a field to this new media type. And let's make it I have a taxonomy vocabulary set up. So let's make it a taxonomy term. Let's call it tags. And we'll say, let it be unlimited. And there's one vocabulary we can use for easiness. So let's make sure this shows up in the media library. There is an additional form mode. There's a specific form mode used by the media library, and it is called media library. So if we go here to configure that, we can add our tags field just by dragging it like configuring a field normally. And then we'll go to there. So let's prove how that looks. Let me try, and I say try because live demo. Let's try to embed, let's try to swap out this. Let's try to swap out this dog for maybe a video of some sloths because it was requested. So you just click that, hit delete, get rid of it, and let's go to, so we have our new media type showing up that we created, looking very promising, but we have no media of that type yet. So let's go find a YouTube video that involves baby sloths. And honestly, I really should have had the URL beforehand because I did not realize it was going to be so freaking slow. Okay, that works for me. So copy link. Let's paste the URL in there. Drupal thinks for a moment, and then, hey, it pulled it in with its default title, which we can change for our local, for our purposes if we want to. And then let's add a taxonomy reference. I think, yep, I definitely do have that. Do I have one for cute things? Apparently not. Oh, whatever. So anyway, I'll tag it as sloths, and then let's save that. And I have my thing, so let's insert that. And there it is, just a normal live YouTube video, all set to go. I'll align that to the right. You'll notice there's no alt field for videos because that wouldn't make any sense. So the media system is smart enough to know the difference there. So let's save this. Also, there's a million questions. Ping me after the show on Slack because I would love to answer all of them, but we're not going to have time. And there it is. I have my sloth video embedded pretty much exactly like any other embedded YouTube video, and it just works. So that's pretty cool. And you can also caption this as well if you wanted to. One final thing I want to demonstrate is customizing the media library a little bit, because as I mentioned, one thing that's common is people sometimes create like a million media types that are really just an image because they want one for hero images or for images of people or different things like that. And I think there's a better way to do it personally. And I want to demonstrate how we do that. So as I said before, the media library is a view. It's called media library. You can edit it like any other view. There's two displays that are relevant here, widget and widget table. Widget is the grid, and we should probably just rename that, but go figure. So let's edit that, and let's add an exposed filter for that taxonomy term that I had for the taxonomy field I created. Just this really, really simple, yeah, widget grid. That would be pretty smart. And we'll add that. Expose the filter. Yeah, I don't like how it shows the field machine name there. This looks pretty good to me. And you can preview that this is how it will look in the media library. Our tags filter is here. If we filter, we will get only the things we want. So this, and you can add any filters you want here, however you want to do it. So that's really handy. Yeah, there are no kittens in this media library. Sorry, cat folks. Let's save that. And it's worth mentioning, I say I'm sort of playing with fire in terms of time here. Yeah, place kitten's great, right? So if I was going to do that again, let's say I was a site with like 1 million media items. You definitely want to have stuff like this, maybe not just even name, you'd probably want to have multiple categories. So, well, I guess it doesn't really, this is kind of pointless because there's only one freaking video and it's the sloth video, so whatever. But the point is, it works. And I'll just leave that where it is maybe, not align it at all. So one thing I also want to demonstrate here, because it can sometimes throw people for a loop, is, as I said, media is a centralized thing. Even using it in the WYSIWYG is just a reference. So if I went and changed you can go modify a media item at any time. You can edit them just like normal entities. And you can change the source field as well. So if I now want to make a different baby sloth video, I can absolutely do that. Just paste in another thing, another URL. And now it's a different, now it goes to, it's the same exact, it's the same media item, has a different video associated with it, and that will be reflected in the content that's using it. And I'll prove it to you. Yep, pretty much. So that's a thing sometimes that throws people for a loop, is when you embed or use media, if you change that media in one central location, that change is propagated everywhere. It's not like using an image where it's really just that one, it's not just like a one-time thing. So that, I think, concludes the live demo, just because I have more material and not enough time to get to it. But there was more I wanted to show you, like setting it up to be responsive, which is something you can do. Setting it up to use image styles, which is something you could do by configuring the display of the media type, much like you would configure the display of an image field for a node, for example. It would be exactly the same thing. Like, you would choose your formatter and it would be image, and then you would just choose which image style to use. I have another 13 minutes, yes, but I have some more things I want to talk about. So leave that open. We can go back to the demo later if you want. I just want to mention a few modules that are useful, may answer some questions. I hope will. So one module it's worth knowing is Entity Browser. If you have not heard of this, it's super powerful. It is basically media library's much bigger brother. It's generic. It works with any entity type. Its purpose is to create UIs to select entities for reuse somewhere else. But it takes a lot more work to set up, sometimes even custom code. The good news is that it works peacefully alongside media library. They don't step on each other's toes. But it tends to be best, in my experience, for more unusual use cases, because media library can't be stretched that far. There are intentional limitations with it. And therefore, if you need to go crazy and do all kinds of interesting stuff with selecting entities, you can use Entity Browser. Media library is not a replacement for it, and never has been, and probably never will be. So that's a thing I should be very clear about. So another module worth knowing is Entity Embed, which is also a generic and powerful module whose job is to embed different kinds of entities visually in CK Editor. And it also works with a lot of different entity types. It also is quite a bit more complicated and takes much more work to set up. But thankfully, it will also work alongside the core media system, in the sense that you can have them both. You can have both Entity Embed and Media Library working together side by side in the same text editor. and they won't step on each other's toes. That said, I also find this one better for more unusual use cases. And I also have to get to my speaker notes. The ability to embed things that are not media is probably not something I see core supporting, but I never say never, but generally entity embed is the best choice for something like that. Another really useful one, this should address a question from earlier, is entity usage, which is a module that helps track where entities are used by other entities. And it can track things, it can track various kinds of usage, like it can track usage that's happening from a field, from an entity reference field or a media field, or it can track usage that's being done through a WYSIWYG, and different other usage methods as well. So that's really useful for managing reusable media so that you don't accidentally do a purge of old media and delete something that's being used in some far off article or whatever. And this is also, I believe this module also has an API that you can extend if you need more esoteric functionality from it. A whole set of useful modules are things that begin with the words media entity. The purpose of these modules is usually just to provide additional media sources. So if you find yourself needing to add, manage tweets in your media library, Instagrams, SoundCloud audio, stuff like that, usually there will be a module called media entity something or other, which does exactly that and allows you to do that. A lot of them are listed on this page, the media entity project page. So these are pretty useful modules as well. But that also brings me to my final module, which is pretty close to useless. Media entity itself, confusingly, is obsolete. It was rewritten and turned into the core media module. So most of its ecosystem, which is to say all those modules that start with media entity. I said media like 100 times tonight, 500 at least. Most of those modules now use core tools. So therefore, the media entity 2.0 version is, it's just a migration path to the core tools. To be clear about a thing I've seen come up in chat, it does not migrate images to normal images over to media. That's not a thing that it does. It mostly just migrates its own concept of media types and everything over to the core stuff. If you see it in the wild, get off of it as soon as possible. I don't think it's going to be supported for Drupal 9. So basically don't use it. It's the only use it has is to get away from it. So let me just close by talking a little about what's coming next for the media system, what our plans are. We have a lot of bugs that we need to fix, particularly in the areas of UX and accessibility. So if you are an expert in either of those subjects, make yourself known. We could use you. We'd like to improve the migration to get more sites using the media system instead of files and images. So that would involve a fairly complicated migration path, and there needs to be more work there. I think that's something we really want to do. And eventually, the end goal really is to have the media system enabled out of the box when you first install Drupal. Just you install Drupal, you have the media system set up. Currently, that's not the case. You have to install the media and media library modules separately. And that's what we want to do. So that was a lot, but I hope it was enough to go forth and build great things. Thank you for listening. And yeah, I'm Fenapproxima everywhere, and I hope you enjoyed it. I don't have a link to rate the session because I honestly have no idea where it is. But I want to go back in the last few minutes here and just answer some of the questions. So one question that came up is, what would be your media type strategy if you'd have multiple types of images, like hero image, blog image, icon, etc.? Use taxonomy or multiple media types. I would recommend using taxonomy. You could use multiple media types, but that just feels, to me, it feels very heavy. It would make about 1 million tabs show up in the left side of the media library when you used it. So I would approach that with taxonomy, I think. There's a question about having done any migration from IMCE to media. I personally haven't. Somebody else may have. I don't think Core has any plans to do that, but I did just mention that we want to do a migration path, so it seems possible that we might have to consider IMCE when doing something like that. So maybe in the future. Inline media, are there any plans for that? I am not sure what inline media means, so see me afterwards, I guess. And there have been a couple of questions about media and templates. So I should, in full disclosure, I haven't built a site in years. And I haven't themed a site in years. So I don't have any like practical advice on that. What I can say is that there are templates for media, and they should be, for media items, they should be overridable, but otherwise it shouldn't be too much different from using the entity systems, from just theming a normal entity. So if you could theme a node as a card, for example, so then I don't see a reason why you would do that, but I guess I'm not really the right person to ask, I think, unfortunately. But I can, if we talk later, I might have some thoughts on it if I know more about your use case. Going through the back scroll. There's a question of how do we get rid of the media name or alt text that shows up under image when embedding. I think that there was an issue for this. As far as getting rid of the alt text, I don't know if I'm not 100% sure you can do that. And I think the idea is that we're trying to, force accessibility best practices. Like when you create an image, like it should have alt text. That's just basic accessibility stuff. So I feel like there's got to be a way to remove it. It might involve some custom programming though. That's another one where I don't know the answer off the top of my head. Great question. How do you add moderation to media? Make it so that it shows only for non-editors after being reviewed for accessibility. Moderation for media is something that you can do where I think you would enable it the same way that you would, I think you would enable it exactly the same way that you would enable moderation for a content type, honestly. I think you would go configure your workflow and you would add the media types that you wanted to have moderated to that workflow. And then I suppose if you're thinking like, could you set like a moderation state when adding media in the media library? I haven't tried it. I would assume that you can. So probably is the answer to that. And is there a chance of making embedded media inline, Drupal entity inline? That's a thing that has been asked for. I think that it was not sort of considered something we would want to do, like just to get this stuff into core, because there's extra complexity there with regard to just having it be like a block that can align itself. So that's another thing where I'm not saying never, but I don't think core has any plans for that right now, as far as I know. So I think that's. Can you put a link on an embedded media item so that when you click on the item, it opens a page? I believe you could. I believe you could do that. As I said, if you configure the display of a media type, if you could find a way to make it do that, or possibly by overriding a template, maybe like a normal entity view mode template, I think you could make that happen. And I feel like core does this somewhere, but I do not remember where. So yes, I think it's certainly possible to do that. Yeah, question that is really good is core has had an insert image button in CK editor. Yes, it has. Is that easy to migrate to media library? Well, you can migrate it the way I showed you, where you just, when you edit the editor configuration, you can just drag out the image button and swap in the media library button. If you're talking about migrating pre-existing embedded images to media items, that's a whole other ball of wax. And that would be pretty complicated. It's something we might have to do to migrate people to media, but honestly, it scares me because migrating HTML is so prone to danger. It's like, yeah, I don't know. So I'm basically, yes, you can easily remove the button and migrate to the media library, but your pre-existing embeds will continue to be images. And I think that's about, oh yeah, there's more stuff here. These are great questions. Keep them coming. if we're not going to get kicked out at time, we can talk until the cows come home. And do people want to get on the? I assume that is. Yeah, I don't know what that is in the moderation panel. I'm trying to figure this out. One question, does media allow any per instance changes on embedded media other than captions and data align? The answer to that is not right now, but we want to, and we need to actually for accessibility, I believe. And also for convenience. Like there's a bunch of reasons why we would want that. So I know that plans exist to do that. But hopefully it will happen sometime in Drupal 9. Another question, are there plans to add an edit button to the media library widget for updating alt text from a node edit page? I think that was a thing that was requested. I think there's a couple of issues for it. I don't think they've made any progress in a while, though. I think that is something we want, though, and it's sort of related to the whole per instance changes thing. Because we do know that we have to be able to override that stuff for entity reference, for media reference fields, as well as just in WYSIWYG. Can we create a gallery without using extra modules? No, you would need extra modules for that, for sure. Like at the very least, I mean, depending on what kind of gallery you want, if you wanted like a carousel, you would need probably like the slick module. Slick entity reference is one way to do it. But I guess depending on what kind of gallery it is, like maybe you could do like just a standard view of media items that has like nice gallery styling on it. I'm not sure. It sort of depends what you would want to do there. Oh, here's a question about entity embed. The E icon, we have entity embed, but the E icon confuses users. Is there a way to change that, or should we switch to a different embed? You can change that. The embed module lets you set the image used for a button. So that's definitely a thing. That is definitely a thing you can do. And somebody already asked that or answered that. I should read the whole, well, whatever. I can't keep up with the back scroll. This is a really good question. Forgive me if already asked, is there a way to have users or groups of users only see their images, preventing other users from using them? I think that depends on whether Views allows that. And I'm not sure that it does, but well, maybe it does. I'm not sure, but that would be how I would approach it. Like I would try to filter the media library views by stuff belonging only to the currently logged in user. So that could maybe be one way to do it if that can be done. What else we got? You're welcome, Kyle. Is media responsive? Does it look good in mobile as it is? I mean, does Drupal look good in mobile as it is? I think there's a lot of issues with responsive all over core. So media is about as responsive as we could get it to be, but so much sort of depends on how the front end theme is built that we can't really make any guarantees about that, unfortunately. Oh, you can write views with group permissions. Okay, great. I guess you can do that. That's good to know. When creating content, is there a way to add a link to a direct download of the document versus a link to the media entity page? I don't know how to do it in core. I would need to like give that a shot, but I think there's a module for that. So probably. And then here's one. In the past few iterations of changes to the media library, we've noticed some classing has shifted in a way that makes the contributed media entity browser and media library UX not quite align. Talk to me more about that one later, because that I've never heard of that module. So I would like to hear more about that. And I think that's all the time we've got. So I think that's pretty, yeah, I think we're about, okay, I'll answer one more question and then I'm out of here. But I'll be on Slack for people to ask me questions if they want to. Of course, translatability, of course, need captions, alt, and title to be translatable, but can we have the option to have language-specific images for things like infographics? I imagine so. I personally have not tried it, but that being said, the source field of a media item is a field. and fields are translatable. So I would sort of by inference, I would guess that that can be done. I have not personally tried it though. And Paige, I don't mean to ignore your question. It's just the back scroll is colossal. So I can't necessarily, anyway, I think that this is the time I have for now. So yeah, I think I shall depart, and I'll be on Slack for the next couple of hours. Spen Proxima in Drupal Slack if anybody needs me. So thank you all so much for attending, and I hope you got something out of it. Take care.